guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin Davis. I am so excited today to bring you the Hubsan Spyhawk. This is the H301S, and this is a newer version. It's around a year old, this plane, and there was a previous version of the Spyhawk probably 4 years ago on Flight Test and some other channels on YouTube. Now, this is an incredible little package, and I won't be able to say enough about this plane in this video because it has so many good attributes, and I feel like all RC airplanes should have this type of onboard technology. GPS, it has return to home, it has a compass on board, it has 1080p in the nose of the plane with your FPV cam integrated into it. You have your 3-inch screen over here for all of your telemetry. It has telemetry on here for how many meters you are from home point. It also has your altitude, your GPS satellite lock on there. It took me around a minute to 2 to 3 minutes for about 7 satellites to lock into the Spyhawk on my launch, and I'm going to show you some flight video in a few minutes after this little intro. But I'm telling you guys, this is where RC airplanes should be in the future. A lot of them are starting to, and you know, this one is around $300 for this package, but the transmitter alone is really worth it. And I'm going to tell you some things I like about it and some things I don't like about it. Of course, as always, there are some things I don't like about it. Maybe the size of it. I wish it was a little bigger and maybe a little heavier so I could fly it on days where there's a little more wind, because with this little guy you want to make sure that you fly it on days where there's almost calm, like when the water's glassed off on the lake near your house. But I flew it out over a lake, and it was absolutely beautiful the day that I flew. And I did test the return to home for you guys, which was really cool. A lot of RC airplane enthusiasts over the years have flown RC airplanes, and I myself have crashed them because, one, I lost signal, or two, I flew too far out on line of sight and I lost my orientation. I couldn't figure out which way it was going, and you know, you're jamming on the sticks trying to go, oh no, and you're looping and looping, and all of a sudden you go in and just crash, and then you go find your airplane, and it sucks. You sometimes have to do a rebuild. But with this one, you have return to home, which is really, really cool. Now, the other biggest thing about this is, for new guys, if you've flown quadcopters before, you have auto stabilization on quadcopters so that it'll totally level out. All you have to do is punch the throttle and push it forward, backward, right, or left. Very similar to the Spyhawk, because all you have to do is launch this one in the air, have your throttle stick up to about 3/4, and it does an auto takeoff leveling for you. It does dive quite a bit when you first launch it, but it starts to gradually come up, and you pull back on your elevator and you start climbing, and you have auto stabilization on here just like a quadcopter. So you have that gyro on board helping keep your wings level, and it's really nice if you're doing FPV, because all you really have to do is control your throttle, keep your throttle at a certain level, and use your rudder and turn left and right as you're cruising, deciding which way you want to go. So you don't even have to fly it on the ailerons, which is really, really nice. Unless you want to do a hard bank, you can do that. But it's a cruiser, folks, and it's similar to the Bixler in style and this pusher prop back here, but very nice flying airplane. So let's go ahead and go over some of the specs real quick on here, and I'll pop this top and I'll show you inside, and we'll take a little closer look at the Spyhawk. Alright, now we're looking at the top of the plane, and if I scoot it back just a little bit, you'll see that 1080p camera up front. It does not stream 1080p, by the way, but it does record 1080p, and there's a little lens cap that comes along with this. I have it on my transmitter bar over there so I don't lose it. So one of the probably the fallbacks, the pitfall of this, is when you come in for a landing, you have to be really careful. If you're landing on a rock road or something like that, you want to be careful that you don't scratch your FPV lens right up front here. So other versions of this I've seen people take and put another camera up top, sitting up here, but this is the way this comes configured, and there's nothing in the way of your FPV view, no props or anything in the way, so this is super cool. Now next up, I have the battery here that comes along with it. This is a 1300 7.4 volt, and it's 15C. I was able to get 20 minutes of flight easily out of this battery. On my flight test the other day that I did over the lake, I probably flew at least 20 minutes, and when I got back to the charger, I put it on the charger and it was still at 8 volt. I couldn't believe it. And so I would like to see how much. I think I could get 30 minutes out of this little 2S 1300, which is absolutely amazing. A little JST connector on here because we're not pushing a lot of volts through this little motor. This is a tiny little motor on the back of this plane. And the motor is also sitting at a tilt, so don't be alarmed if yours looks like it's crooked. It's actually supposed to be like that because it counteracts the torque and pushes you in a straight line instead of having it straight, which would kind of push you off to the right a little bit. So they're counteracting that, and it's like that on a lot of electric airplanes. You'll see just a little bit of a tilt on the motor. So let's go ahead and pop the top for you, and I'll show you inside the canopy here. So we have our FPV system up front. This is running on 5.8. Let's see if I can bring it a little closer for you and get it to focus here. Okay, so you have a record button in here. If you wanted to start recording, you can do that, or you can start recording from the transmitter. You push the enter switch on the transmitter and that will start the video to record here. You also have a USB port here. I'm assuming that's for getting data off of your micro SD card or firmware updates in the future from Hubsan. And mine came with a 4 GB micro SD card. So that just slides right down in this little port right here. So I'll go ahead and put the battery in here for you. This goes in just like this. It slides in toward the front. And this is where the CG is going to balance out correctly. So if you were to hold it about an inch behind the wing with both of your fingertips, or a couple inches behind the wing, you're going to get a perfectly balanced aircraft. And your control is on 2.4. Now this plane is around 355 grams takeoff weight with the battery and everything in there, and they do claim that it flies 20 to 30 minutes. But let's go ahead and look at that motor on the back. This is an 1812 brushless motor on here, and it's running 3200 kV, so it's got quite a lot of RPMs on this little tiny motor and a very tiny little prop, and the prop is pushing the aircraft forward in this direction. You sort of have this high mount motor, which is nice for belly landings. I did do a belly landing with this one, and just a little tiny bit of scuffs on the bottom of here. And you also have this plastic runner under here to protect the bottom of the aircraft during the landings. I've seen some guys do mods where they actually had a little balsa fin on the bottom of here, so it kind of picks it up a little more. Now where the wings connect, there's two little pins right here. When the wing pushes through, the pins will snap in place. Now what I did to add some extra security to this wing, because you're going to have some turbulence up high, I took some packing tape and I put along this edge right here, the seam and the fuselage and the wing, to keep this fuselage from not separating from the wing, because if these two little pins pop out, this wing is coming off. And you're going to have to take your servo leads and plug those in up inside here before you install the wing, but that's not a big problem. And we have our connection antenna coming out here for 2.4. I believe that's the 2.4. Now really neat about this is that we already have LEDs installed on the bottom here on both sides, red and green. And the cool thing is that you can turn these on or off. So when I was flying in the park, a lot of people noticed it with the LEDs on, and then if I turn them off, not quite as many people notice the plane up in the air because it is white. And you can also get a black version of this plane as well. And I'll show you the back end. The tail looks really tiny on this plane. It's super tiny, and we're running by the way, on the motor we have a 12 amp ESC running that brushless motor. I forgot to tell you about that. And the servos are 3.7 grams, so it has 4 servos up inside the fuselage controlling the surfaces, and those are pretty lightweight. Okay, let's talk about the coolest thing about this Spyhawk is this all-in-one radio system with your FPV screen in the middle. It's around a 3-inch screen. I have start and stop here on the video. I'm able to take 1080p video out of the front of the nose of this plane, and you have different switches up top here. GPS, you have return to home switch, and you can go into the menus and change up some of the information in here. Throttles on the left. You can change it from mode 1 and mode 2. We have roll over here and pitch. We have yaw here. So pretty standard setup for mode 2. You have trim switches down here, left and right, and you also have sort of dial switches on the top left and right. You have your 5.8. This is a patch antenna for your video system, and we have our 2.4 antenna. Now I have also seen some people doing mods on these and adding more powerful antennas, and right away Hubsan does claim that we get 1,000 meters out with this aircraft, so that's around 3,000 feet out. That's quite a ways. And I've seen other videos online too. If you look up some other flight videos, guys around the world are testing these out for a couple miles. So very far distance with this stock setup. Now I'll show you real quickly before I turn the transmitter on. We'll show you some of the things that comes along with it. Now it does come along with this AA battery. It takes 8 AA batteries in the transmitter. It has a little JST connector here, and when I saw that JST connector on there, I thought, well, I'll put my own little 3S battery in there. I have a little 3S 1300 nanotech, 850 size nanotech, and it lasts quite a long time in there running this screen, so you can put a little larger one in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side, and it also comes with a little hood that attaches here, and that'll keep it a little shaded from the sun. You also have the Hubsan Charger that comes along with it, so you have pretty much everything you need to fly. You will need to have a US converter for this. This is the European version converter plug, and we have the directions that comes along with it. Pretty decent directions, not super complicated, telling you how to launch and giving you some more specs on everything in here. Now a couple of the things, you can also use your Fat Sharks on these, so you can actually do some real-time FPV, and I have a DVR on here so I can record on here as well, so that is really nice. And you can also use a tripod setup to where you can get an external monitor, and I'm going to turn this on in just a minute. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the external screen, because it will pick up that signal here with this little Fat Shark antenna. So another 5.8 circular polarized antenna. So I'll go ahead and turn on the transmitter, and we'll start talking about the transmitter. Alright guys, let's go ahead and take a closer look at this radio and this little telemetry setup we have here with the onboard video. Nice controller. I love this controller. It's really simple to use. It has a ton of features packed into it. Like I said, it does do 1080p video. You have that up here, and you have this sort of green overlay here, and the red switches down here. Those are actually your trim levels, your trim tabs. If you're up in the air and it's leaning one way to the right or left, you can use these little trim tabs down here to adjust that and make it fly straighter instead of off to one side. Now also up top you have two position switches. You have A and B here on the outsides. You have GPS and your return to home switch. If stuff goes really south, you can flip it into return to home. Also, when you're loading up the GPS, you want to make sure that the GPS switch is down and activated, so that you have proper satellite connection. Now, I'm indoors in the studio right now, so we're not going to get any satellites loaded up, but I'm going to go ahead and move this in a little bit and show you some of the telemetry that you get on here. And let's see if I can get it to focus there. There we go. So up top, at the very top right, I'll grab something to point with, you have your satellite counts up here. So you want to be about 7 satellites when you load the home point. Leave this aircraft on the ground for 1 to 3 minutes until you get 7 satellites or more here before you do your hand launch. Now you have your other various degrees of pitch here, and down here, this is where it gets interesting, and this is a very important information for you when you're flying this. This is your distance right here. Right now it says 0 meters, and that's the distance from home. So if you get out there 500 meters and you lose it and you want to try to fly it back, these two right here, distance and altitude, the one below it as well, these are going to be your best friends if you lose your situation awareness and you need to bring it back. So you'll know whether you're headed away from yourself or you're coming back. Numbers are going down, obviously on the distance you're coming back. So pretty important. There is no arrow indicator on here like some other more advanced flight controllers out there for fixed wing aircraft. I would like to see an arrow on here in the future somehow, but you know, then again, this is a pretty decent display. So down here, tilt this a little more, you can see what mode you're in. Right now I'm in stabilized mode. In the very middle of the screen it shows you that. I'm also in mode 2 here, and up top, Hubsan, over on the top right, we have, this is the battery data, how much battery I have inside the transmitter itself, and just below that you see 7.9 volts. That's the onboard battery on the aircraft. So over to the right, over to the left of that information, you see that we do have a micro SD card in there, and it does see the micro SD card. Now if you want to record, it's pretty easy. Down here just below the screen, you see these buttons here, exit, up, down, and enter. This is navigating the menus inside. So if I press once, that's going to start the video. So up at the very top up here, you'll see that red light start blinking, and now I'm recording video. Pretty easy. And I press it again to stop it, and the icon of the micro SD card comes back. So now we can go ahead and go into the menu. If you press enter and hold, it's going to bring you into the menu. You can also reverse servos and do fun stuff like that, but don't mess around with the servo reversing. So we can use the up down buttons to navigate the menu. I could go down here and set the sensitivity. I can select what type of, whether it's a plane or a multi-rotor, because you can use this with other Hubsan aircraft. You can bind this up to a quadcopter. I'll go down expert mode. Yes, that means I want to have some manual mode. Stick mode is number 2, which is American style, and you can change the frequency. So I'm on 5G and I want to stay on 5G. Now I can go ahead and press exit here, and that'll take me back to the main menu. So this is something I'm going to highly recommend for you guys. If you do get a Hubsan Spyhawk, get yourself a 7-inch monitor, mount it to a tripod, and bring it along, because this is the data that you're going to see. You're going to be able to see where you're flying much easier than this little tiny 3-inch screen. It is pretty tiny, and once you get up there a couple hundred feet, it's kind of hard to see where you're going and see your landmarks from the air when you're coming back toward yourself. Now, 7-inch makes it way easier to see where you're going. It also shows you minimal telemetry here. You can see that it doesn't show you the green telemetry overlay like you get on this, but I can tell when I'm recording. If I press record here on the transmitter, it shows me I'm recording here. So essentially what it's showing you here is the live feed coming from what the aircraft is seeing, the aircraft camera. So I see that my transmitter has been on for 15 minutes there. It's counting the time that it's been on and shows me my battery levels and how much time I've started recording. So I'll go ahead and stop the video. But this helped me a lot on the flight test that I did. And you can also run an external DVR on the outside of this and record your video from this as well. So if you ever lost your airplane, at least you would have recording here as well as for a backup. That way, if you lose your plane, you can use that video that would be recorded here and play it back and go find your plane if you don't have a GPS locator on board. But very, very highly recommended. And I'll go ahead and I'll post a link down below for a 5.8 setup with a 7-inch monitor for you guys. Alright guys, let's go ahead and let's see some footage from my flight test and my return to launch sequence. And what happens here is I get out there, kind of lose it a little bit, and so I flip into RTH, And what happens when you do that, when you flip that switch to return home, like I said, keep your throttle up about half throttle to 3/4. That way you get back home safely. And it's going to come back, and what it's going to do is it's going to loiter in the area right where your transmitter is. And it might decrease altitude a little bit and come down for you as well if you're at a higher altitude. So pretty cool setup here. I wish this was on all airplanes that I own. I really wish I had an autopilot and GPS on just about every fixed wing I own, because this is a great feature and safeguard against flying any RC airplane. I really wish this was on all of them. It's really great. So now we'll go ahead and we'll take a look at some of the flight footage, and we'll talk about some of that flight footage as well. Alright guys, here we are on the muddy banks of the lake here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a hand toss. It did sit here for a couple minutes and recorded the home point. So here we go, out over the lake for you guys. And you'll notice right away, it's not super stable video like you'd get from a quadcopter with a 3-axis gimbal setup, but you know what? This is all about kind of being in the cockpit and feeling like you're really flying an airplane. This is really neat. So you'll notice right away that the video is really decent on here. This 1080p, it is really nice. And my idea was that I was going to fly out here toward this island and see how far out I could get out to that island. I got a little bit chicken here, and I kind of turned around to come back a little bit. You can see our cars down there below in that little slough right there. And I decided to turn around here in a second, I believe. It handles sun glare pretty well, actually, on the screen. The sun it was about 4 o'clock, about 4 p.m. right here. So I'm just kind of up there cruising, checking it out, seeing, before I go too far out, you want to check out your headwind. Now, the wind was blowing away from me, so coming back to the home point was actually into the headwind. Very important here that you do test out your headwind and see how hard it is to get back, because you don't want to go way out there past half your battery capacity. You won't have enough battery to get back in a headwind. It'll use a lot of the battery up. It could use half the battery in a quarter of the time. So something to think about if you're going to fly FPV fixed wing and or quadcopters. The clouds are beautiful up there. So I'm just kind of cruising around and enjoying the scenery here. A couple birds came really close to the plane there. They got a little interested in it. Does look a lot like a seagull or some type of bird soaring around up there. The white version that I have. But I was pretty surprised and impressed with the camera. The camera looks really nice and high resolution. I don't mind 1080p. Not everything has to be in 4K. And this is for fun anyway. This is recreational. It looks really nice right there. So I cruise around here for just a little while longer, and then I decide to test out the RTL, and I'm going to show you that little bit of footage here. We'll skip to that real quick. So here I am, probably a couple hundred feet up, and I'm over to my right, and I can still see the airplane, and I'm going to go ahead and switch into RTH right now. And the airplane takes a moment to get its bearings, come over this field right here, and it starts to turn around right here. And it's going to turn around and level off. So now we're in this RTH. Now the interesting thing about this return to home is it lets me deviate the course a little bit, and I can move the rudder left and right, and I can change the course a little bit as I'm coming back. So if there was a big structure or something in the way, and I can see my video here on my screen, if I saw something was in the way, I can fly around it, which is really nice. It doesn't throw it out of RTH altogether, but it does let you steer a little bit on the way back. So now we're coming back. And what it does is it swings in and comes around and starts to loiter once it gets a little closer to the home point. And I'll skip ahead here so we don't have to watch the super long version of this. And now you can see the cars down there, and I'm playing around with the roll right now, kind of pushing it over to the right as you see on the screen here, kind of tilting it back and forth. Now something interesting happened here when I came back and got a little closer. It descended quite quickly. It came back to the home point and it realized that it was over top of our car down here. You can see the little white truck there, and it decided to come down drastically. So if there's tall trees around where you're flying, around where your home point are, it doesn't have obstacle avoidance, so keep that in mind. It might all of a sudden descend on you quite quickly, but it's going to level off. It really scared the bejesus out of me when it did this. So I get coming in a little closer here, it starts to loiter in RTH, and all of a sudden it did this. Holy crap. I thought it was going into the trees or into the water, and then it leveled off and it started to continue that loiter circle around the home point. So at this point I disengaged and took over manual flight control here, and I decided to come in and land, and it was a really awesome experience. So I would have to highly recommend an RC airplane with a return to home function, and autopilot, GPS, auto stabilization, and all that cool stuff on there. This one's around $300, but I feel like it's well worth the money to have that kind of safeguard and return to home function, because otherwise you lose an RC airplane, generally speaking, it's not coming back and you're going to lose it. You might never see it again, or you might find it in a few pieces. So thanks again for watching this episode, guys. I had a ton of fun with my Spyhawk, and I am definitely keeping this one because I'm really in love with it, and I want to do some more mods to it and fly it whenever I have the chance. I love this plane. So thanks again for hanging out on Drone Camp's channel. You guys, I will see you on the next one.